Guys, everyone, please check your audio and video settings, please. Super. Okay, now tell me, guys. Tell me. I want to generate log messages. I want to generate log messages. What is the tool we use? Generally, what is the most popular tool we use? SLF4J, log4j. These are the tools we use. Okay. This log4j, SLF4j will generate log messages indicating the code that is involved in the execution, flow of execution, code that is involved in the flow of execution with respect to one project, right? With respect to one project. Hey, come on. Basically, with respect to one class. Okay. If you enable logging in all classes, it will be with respect to one project. But listen carefully. In microservices architecture, every service is a separate project. Multiple services will be in the communication. Now, I should get the logging information across the multiple microservices. I should get the flow of execution across the multiple microservices. Because given request may communicate, may make 10 microservices to participate in communication. Now tell me, basic log4j, basic SLF4j is sufficient, boss? Standalone login, standalone tracing is sufficient, boss? No. We need to do logging and tracing activities across the multiple microservices, indicating the request to flow to response flow. Aisa no na? We need a special tools na to cover distributed logging across the multiple microservice projects or not? Okay, guys. What is tracing, boss? Finding out execution flow or path from request to response is called tracing. And let's trace. Police people will trace the. Police people will trace how the incident happened, after that what happened, after that what happened, after that what happened. Suppose anti-corruption bureau is there, one department. If bribe has come to minister, okay, from where it came, that fellow get from where? That fellow got the bribe from where? They try to find out entire hierarchy, right? They try to trace everything, boss. Finding out execution flow or path from request to response is called tracing. Okay, just order of the things. Logging, finding out various lines of code, various components that are involved in the flow of execution, having different logger levels like debug, info, warn, etc. is called logging, boss. Is called logging. In fact, logging is also one kind of tracing, Rababu. Okay, basically in the logging also tracing is happening. But here we mainly highlight what, guys? Which class, which line executed, which block executed. This is what we try to highlight or not. So logging is also an event of tracing only. An extension of tracing, boss. See? Finding out execution flow or path. Finding out various lines of code, various components that are involved in the flow of execution. So both are targeting same thing now, boss. But tracing gives clear-cut idea. When this request is given, what are the things happened? How the request gone to web component or various web component, how response is generated back to browser. In that process, logging also one kind of tracing, boss. Yeah, now tell me, intra-communication of microservices. You already know that. Array with the support of client components like what? Fin client, LBC, discovery client. Yeah, we have done this communication, Rababu. We have done this communication between microservices. It speaks about communication that happened between multiple microservices. Understanding my statement? The request given to one microservice talking to another microservice is called intra-communication between microservices. Is called intra-communication between microservices. Are you understanding my statement, boss? Okay, now we understood what is tracing, what is logging, boss. Now listen, distributed logging and tracing. First, look at the diagram. Project or application. In that one, multiple microservices are there, guys. Multiple microservices are there. Now listen carefully what happens. First microservice talking to second, second talking to third, third talking to fourth. And all the log messages generated will be written to what, guys? Info.log file. Now every microservice is a separate project. Don't forget. Every microservice is a separate project. Are you understanding my statement? Pros 1, what is there? Pros 2, okay, pros 3, here is pros 4. Here is pros 4, guys. Have a look. When the microservices are in intra-communication, enabling the tracing and logging activities across the multiple microservices to find out the execution flow of each and every request to response is called. Each and every request to response is called distributed tracing and logging, boss. See. When microservices are in intra-communication, tracing and logging activities across the multiple microservices to find out the execution flow of each and every request to response is called distributed tracing and logging. And when I give request, how many microservices are involved to fulfill the request? Okay. See, earlier we have used SL4J, log4j with respect to single project. But now I have to find out tracing and logging activities across the multiple microservices. Understanding my statement? This will be enabled on multiple microservices for one time to help new developers or testers or debuggers or UAT team to know execution flow from request to response across the multiple microservices forever. This is very, very important. Concentrate, guys. Already project is there having microservice architecture. You joined newly in the company. Okay, they have given some KT. You know what is KT? Knowledge transfer. Whatever knowledge on the project they have, they will. And you know that no one give 100% KT smoothly. Why? Because the person who is giving KT is busy of leaving the organization, right? So he always gives off knowledge. And others also don't show that much interest towards giving KT. So they provide documentation, no doubt in that. Oh, but you want to know what is the order of execution, especially when microservices are there in communication. In that situation, this distributed logging will definitely help in us. Okay, when I click on payment, it is going through which microservices? It is going through which microservices? In those microservices, which class, which lines of code is executed? Going through which microservices is tracing boss. In that process, that is distributed tracing. In that process, which lines of code, which classes are executed is what? Which lines of code, which classes are executed is what? Logging. Comes under logging. That comes under logging. Everyone understanding my statement? Okay, now listen. Yeah, at the end, listen. At the end, tracing information also will be returned to log file only. In fact, in fact, okay, in fact, in logging, tracing is involved, guys. In logging, only tracing is involved. Look at this point. Logging is extension of tracing. In fact, logging is a kind of tracing activity. The only difference is the logging activity writes its log messages to destination file called destination called file or DB or mail server and etc. Having ability to filter the messages, based on the logger level we have chosen. In logging, we can say, write only info messages, write info and higher category messages, write only warn and higher category messages. Are you understanding my statement, guys? So that kind of information we can place here or not, boss? Listen carefully. What is this? Okay. Finding the components involved. Okay, now you might have understood. For tracing, separate thing is not there, guys. Logging is also one kind of tracing, right? Finding components involved in the execution flow. In the execution flow of a project is called standalone tracing. Standalone tracing. Finding the okay, components and the lines involved in the execution flow. In the execution flow. The execution flow of a project execution flow of a project is called standalone. Okay. Involved in the execution flow of a project is called standalone logging, boss. Is called standalone logging. Okay, guys. Finding the finding the microservices involved in the execution flow of a project is called distributed tracing. What is that? Distributed tracing. Okay, guys. Finding the components and lines involved. Okay, finding the microservices and the lines involved in the execution flow of a project. In the execution flow of a project is called distributed logging. Distributed logging. Are you understanding my statement, guys? Yeah. For standalone, we take the support of what, guys? SL4J, Log4J kind of. For distributing, we need a separate tools. Okay, Chipkin, Sleuth, these kind of names are there, guys. These kind of names are there. Are you getting my point, boss? Yes. Okay, now listen. Logging is extension of tracing. In fact, logging is a kind of tracing activity. The only difference is logging activity writes its log messages to destination called file DB mail server, having ability to filter the messages based on the logger level we have chosen. Tracing means no filter, nothing, always gives flow. Are you understanding my statement? In logging, we have a freedom to write the generated log messages by filtering them to different destination. Understanding my statement, guys? Come on. Officially, through logging only, we do tracing, Babu. Through logging only, we do tracing. Understanding my statement? Okay. We do tracing activity by using logging tools. By using logging tools or APIs. By using logging tools or APIs. Yes, boss. Now tell me. Here is request, guys. That request is given to MS1. MS1 is communicating with MS2. MS2 is communicating with MS3. MS3 is communicating with MS4. MS4 is communicating with MS5. Okay, guys. No. Trace is the lager level, boss. It's no way related to tracing. Someone is confusing himself. Sir, we have a trace lager level now. That is called trace. No. No, don't mix up, guys. Trace is one lager level name. That's it. It's nowhere related to tracing activity. Clear, my dear? Okay, listen, yes. Listen. Okay, I'll give clarity. When I give request, by involving which microservices response has come, that is distributed tracing. By involving which microservices response has come, which lines of codes are executed in each microservice, and what are the logger level for those log messages, and writing those log messages to different destination is called, tell me, guys, distributed logging. Tracing means just overall idea. Oh, these many things are involved. This to this communication happened. Logging means detailed report, and moreover, that report can be written to whom? Destination. Are you understanding my point? Destination. That too, if you want, you can filter the messages. You need not to write all category messages. You can write only important category messages. Or you can write all category messages. Yes or no, na, boss? Super, guys. Alright, databases logging is nowhere related to code logging. What happened inside the database is called DB log. If execution takes place across the multiple microservices, we need the support of distributed logging and tracing, Raghav. We need support of distributed logging and tracing. Everyone getting my point there or not there? Is that clear, guys? So we give request that will talk to MS. MS will talk to MS2, MS3, MS4, MS. Okay, now have a look, guys. Have a look. Sleuth and Jipkin, boss. Sleuth and Jipkin. Sleuth and Jipkin. These two are components or tools provided by Spring Cloud environment to enable distributed logging and tracing on the microservices that are in intra-communication. Listen carefully. Okay. That are in intra-communication. Sleuth and Jipkin. These two are the tools, guys. These two are the tools. In that one, what is the role of Sleuth? A Spring Cloud component providing unique ID for each request flow. The programmer can use these unique IDs, to find out execution flow of request, guys. The programmer can use these unique IDs. Execution flow of request, guys. Understanding my statement? Sleuth, guys. What sleuth you do? Suppose you have given 20 requests. For every request, it will generate one ID, boss. Alphanumeric value. So by submitting that unique ID, we can get the request flow of each request. Guys. A Spring Cloud component providing unique ID for each request flow. The programmer can use this unique ID to find out the execution flows of request, guys. Super. There are two types of IDs are there, guys. Trace ID, span ID. Unique ID for each request flow across the multiple microservices. If developer get this trace ID, he can find out all the microservices that are involved in the request flow. Trace ID is very, very important. Come on, guys. Span ID is there. Unique ID given for each microservice. If developer get this span ID, then he can find out all the execution happened in that microservice. Listen. Span ID is given for each microservice, guys. So by using span ID, he can get what are the execution happened in that particular microservice. What are the execution happened in that microservice? Are you getting my point, boss? Getting my point? Okay, 10 microservices plus 10 span IDs. Okay, 100 requests are given. Each request is taking the support of 5 to 6 microservices to complete the flow. Okay, 100 trace IDs will be there. 100 trace IDs will be there. Are you understanding my statement? 100 trace IDs will be there. Okay, now listen, guys. Okay, listen. These are called ELK stack tools, Babu. ELK stack. ELK stack. Listen. Elastic Search, Kibana, Logstash, all. So if you don't want to use Sleuth and Jipkin, which are given by Spring Cloud, for the same activities, we have some third-party tools also. We have some third-party tools also. They are called ELK stack tools, guys. E for Elastic Search, Log for Logstash, K for Kibana. K for Kibana. Are you understanding my statement? ELK stack is acronym to describe a stack of comprise of popular projects. Elasticsearch, Logstash, and Kibana, often referred as Elasticsearch. ELK stack gives you ability to aggregate logs from all your systems and applications, analyze these logs, create visualization for application and infrastructure monitoring, faster troubleshooting, security analytics, and more. Okay, now you understood, guys. ELK stack is alternate for Jipkin and Sleuth. Jipkin and Sleuth are given by Spring Cloud people. Okay, in the market, if you don't want to use Spring Cloud one, we have to think about going for ELK stack. Everyone, if you are not aware, understanding my statement. Okay, we are a Spring Cloud people now. Our main focus is on what? Jipkin and Sleuth only, because we have to worry about Spring supplied ones. We have to worry about Spring supplied ones. Is that clear? Okay. Yes, guys. Tell me, boss. The alternate tools for Sleuth and Jipkin. Sleuth and Jipkin. Understanding my statement? Yeah, some companies will use ELK stack. Some companies will use Jipkin and Sleuth. Are you getting my point, guys? Okay. For distributed logging and tracing or ELK stack. ELK stack. ELK stack. Tell me. ELK stack. ELK stack is the combination of tools, guys. Combination of tools. Tell me. E for Elasticsearch. L for Logstash. K for Kibana. K for Kibana. Are you getting my point? Super. It's these three tools we have to use in a combination, boss. You have to use in combination. Okay. Come back. Alternate for ELK stack. Alternate for ELK stack. What are the best alternates for ELK stack? Okay, now we have a lot of alternates, guys. Top alternates to ELK is, one is Datadog. Datadog, Splunk. Hey, don't think that ELK stack is ultimate. For ELK stack also alternates are there. Splunk is there, right? Graylog, Logstash. Logstash is part of what? ELK only. Don't worry about it. Logstash is part of this one. Okay, I think you understood, guys. Someone asking about what about Splunk, sir? We have other things also. Okay. Parallel tools for ELK stack and Sleuth and Jipkin. Sleuth and Jipkin. Understanding? Sleuth, comma, Jipkin. Yeah, why I'm giving this alternate knowledge, not compulsory every project. Okay, not compulsory every project should use these things. Sleuth and Jipkin. Some companies will use ELK. Some companies will use Splunk kind of thing. Are you getting Splunk? What is the other name, guys? Anyone remember? Datadog. Datadog. Next. Okay, I forgot. Datadog. Greylog. Greylog. And etc. No, Logstash is part of ELK about. That has given wrong idea. Greylog and etc. So all these are for distributed logging and tracing, Rama. Tracing also tracing is also what? Tracing is also covered as part of logging, boss. It's all about feel. It's all about theoretical difference. Practically through logging only tracing will happen, right, boss? Okay, now listen. This is very important. Okay, this is this. Using sleuth, you will get trace IDs, pan IDs, right? Super. But there should be someone, there should be someone collecting these messages. Come on. There should be someone collecting these messages and giving to Jipkin server. So this Jipkin server will try to give some visual representation, boss. For that purpose, Jipkin client and Jipkin server comes into picture. So ultimately, generating log messages having trace ID, span ID will be taken care by sleuth guys. But gathering them, presenting them properly, come on, presenting them properly, providing, giving proper visual representation, all these things will be taken care by what? Jipkin. In Jipkin, two things are there. Jipkin client, Jipkin server. So Jipkin client collects the messages from what? Information from sleuth object, sleuth tool, and provides to Jipkin server. And this Jipkin server is having ability to present in a proper manner by providing some visual representation. So have a look, guys. Have a look. Okay, 1 to 9 numbers, microservices flow of execution. Request, MS1, number 2, MS1 executing. Call to MS2. Yeah, because of call is going to MS2. MS2 logics are executing, that is number 4. Call to MS5, number 5. Call to MS3. Okay, because of MS3 is executing. Super. Result come back, guys. Result came back to MS2. From there, result came back to MS1. And from there, response gone to the client. From there, response gone to the client. Everyone understanding? This is normal, simple communication, Rabau. This is simple communication. Now, listen carefully. Every microservice is having its own span ID. For this microservice, separate span ID. For this microservice, separate span ID. For this microservice, separate span ID. Okay, using span ID, what we can get? All the log messages related to each microservice. What about the trace ID? If I use the trace ID, I will get the all the microservices that are involved for each request flow. Trace ID is bigger, span ID is bigger. Trace ID is bigger. Okay, now listen. 1, 2, 3. All these microservices are generating log messages, now boss. Log messages, right now, boss. Flow of execution. All this will go to whom? Sleuth tool. All these things will go to what? Sleuth tool. Listen, this is what sleuth will do. What sleuth will do? Internally, it uses one or other log4j logging tool. it will write the log messages to log file. It will write the log messages to log file. Log messages to log file. Are you understanding my statement, guys? Log messages to log file. Super. Okay, next. Finds out execution flow across the multiple microservices. Okay. And from the sleuth object, sampler objects will be there. Some objects, sampler objects, technical object. Sampler objects are collected and given to Jipkin client. Jipkin client. This Jipkin client will give those messages to whom? Those objects to whom? Jipkin server, which is another another project running on port number 9411. Is a fixed port number. It can be changed, not an issue, guys. Now listen carefully. Displace tracing details, flow of execution details. Flow of execution detail. Only trace IDs and span IDs will be there. Only trace IDs and span IDs will be there, guys. Okay, let us assume. Let us assume 200 requests are there. 200 request related trace IDs and involved span IDs will be there. 200 request related trace ID, involved span ID will be there. Only no log messages, nothing. Only no log messages, nothing, boss. So from here, we copy trace ID or span ID and we go to log file and we try to find out the log messages. For that trace ID, what are the log messages involved? For that trace ID, what are the log messages involved? That means this sleuth will write generated log messages along with the span IDs and trace IDs. By knowing each request related trace ID, involved span IDs, by taking them and submit them to log file, we are able to get all the log messages related to each request. Everyone understanding my statement? Okay, then what is the role of Jipkin server, sir? Jipkin server role is how many requests are given, presenting those many trace IDs, presenting span IDs involved in each request related tracing activities. All these things will happen here. Don't worry, once you see the practical, you will get clarity. Once you see the practical, you will get the clarity. From here, we gather what? Trace ID and span ID, and we try to submit to log file in order to see the log messages. In order to see the log messages to complete those flow of execution. See, collect trace ID, span ID from Jipkin server UI. Okay, programmer submits them in what? Log file. Submit trace ID, span ID here to know the flow. So then only you will get the log messages. This much hangama involved, guys. Okay, now look at A to G, you observe A. Log messages. These are the log messages, right? All these log messages are collected by whom? Sleuth object. I mean, sleuth tool. This sleuth will write log messages to log file having trace IDs and span IDs. Super. Okay, guys. This sleuth object will give what? These trace ID, span ID related information to Jipkin client in the form of sampler objects. So these sampler objects are passed to whom? These sampler objects are passed to whom? Jipkin server. These sampler objects are passed to whom, guys? Jipkin server. Are you getting my point there or not? These sampler objects are passed to whom, guys? Jipkin server. Are you understanding? Jipkin server will try to give visual representation just having span IDs and trace IDs. Just having span IDs and trace IDs. No log messages. No log messages, right? Displays tracing details, flow of execution details. Only trace IDs and span ID. Okay, from here, we gather the each trace ID or each span ID and we submit in the log file so that we will get all the log messages related to the trace ID and span ID. Like this, we can identify which microservices, which lines of microservices, which blocks of microservices are involved in the flow of execution. Look at the numbers 129. Request to response flow with respect to microservices. A to G, sleuth Jipkin related log or trace messages flow. Log or trace messages flow. Are you getting my point here, guys? Come on, come on. I hope everything is there in the diagram. Tomorrow, if I start practicals also, it will be with respect to this diagram. Come on, everyone, please respond. Diagram is talking everything nicely. Sir, nothing to confuse, sir. Nothing to confuse. Sleuth will generate the log messages having trace IDs and span IDs. Clear? Okay. Those log messages will be written to log file having trace IDs and span IDs. Super na? Okay. But okay, now listen. Here all log messages will be there in the sequence of execution. Right? All log messages will be there in the sequence of execution. When I give request, 3 microservices are executed. In microservice 1, 2 classes, 10 lines of code. Microservice 2, 2 classes, 10 lines of code. Microservice 3, 1 class, 5 lines of code. Accordingly, log messages will be there in the sequence. Suppose parallelly other requests also coming to other same microservices. Even those log messages also will be there. Come on, my dear. Simultaneously 100 requests are given, boss. 100 requests related, all log messages will be there. With trace IDs. Speak, Rababu. If you don't speak, how can I go further? Okay. When you open the log file, can you find out the request flow, guys? Why these log messages are there in what, boss? Zigzag sequence. Log message 1 of request 1, log message 1 of request 2 will come back to back, right? Because both requests are given sequentially. But what the good part is every message is maintaining trace ID and span ID. Nice. Now listen. That's why what they have done here, log messages with trace ID, span ID, the two in a zigzag manner. For not just for one request, for all requests, the log messages are there. That's why they are presenting only trace IDs separately. So collect the trace ID, submit in the log file. So whatever the log messages that are there having those trace ID will be highlighted. So by taking those messages, we can understand the flow of execution. We can get the code that is involved in the flow of execution. Say something, my dear. Okay, I'll tell one more example, boss. I'll take one real life example. Boss. There is a 10 pages of content. You have 2 minutes time. You just want to know whether your name is there or not in those 10 pages. If there, how many times there? Tell me. You will sit and read all the pages. You'll use Control F. There you type your name. Wherever your name is there, you go to that paragraph, you will read it. Yes, na, boss? You'll go to that paragraph, you will read it. That's the end of the story. Fine. One more example. Array, span, every microservice, one span ID. For every microservice, one span ID, right? For every request to flow, one trace ID. Okay. Now listen carefully. Think in this angle, guys. Think in this angle. For example, ATM machines are generating a lot of log messages. ATM machines are generating lots of log messages, boss. Okay. But some malpractice is happening, one ATM machine. All these log messages will be written to single file only, na? If certain ATM machine is having some issue, we'll try to have that machine ID, whatever it is, machine ID. By submitting that machine ID in those log file, we will try to get messages related to that machine only. We'll try to get messages related to that machine only. The same thing here. Everyone getting my point? Okay, you have a ticket booking application. You are booking tickets of all the flights belonging to all the companies. But in certain flight ticket booking, some problem happened. Some technical issue is coming. Okay, so you want to know what are the lines that are executed while booking those tickets. So then you'll go to log file, you'll submit the flight ID, okay, flight ID, and you will try to get the code involved in the execution now, boss. So the final conclusion is what you know. Sleuth will do everything, Babu. Jipkin work is what? Presenting each request related trace ID and involved span IDs. Span IDs means involved microservices. Involved microservices. Got it? Ravindra, you are not listening class. Trace ID is for request to response flow. Span ID is for microservice. I think I have spent 1 minute time on it clearly. Now you are saying every microservice will have separate trace ID. I means I'm helpless. Trace ID, span ID, I clearly given difference. And here also observe. This microservice separates span ID, this microservice separates span ID, this microservice separates span ID. How it will be there, 10 requests are there, 10 trace IDs. Okay, first request has involved 2 microservices. 2 microservice related span IDs will be there. That's it. Second trace ID that has involved 4 microservices. 4 microservice related span IDs will be there. Abstract information will be there, right? If you submit those trace IDs and span IDs in the log file, or at least trace IDs, you will get the real log messages. Because this log file will maintain all the log messages in zigzag manner for multiple requests, that too in a simultaneously those log messages will be written. I hope those who said it's looking heavy, I think it's not heavy, it's a simple one. Maybe technical statements, guys. Sleuth is doing every dirty work. Jipkin role is very simple, Babu. Just collect the information from sleuth, present trace IDs and involved span IDs. Just some GUI work is doing. Entire credit should be given to sleuth only. Entire credit should be given to sleuth only. Yeah, see guys, provides UI environment running on port number 9411. Jipkin clients of each MS. Jipkin clients of each MS collects trace IDs, span IDs of distributed tracing, logging from the sleuth component and gives to Jipkin server to display having UI. As understanding my statement? Super. While working with the distributed logging and tracing, each MS contains its own Jupyter client and sleuth component. But there must be only one Jupyter server as a centralized server that collects the data from all Jupyter clients of different microservices as sampler objects to display as the UI. That means here separate sleuth object Jupyter client. Here separate sleuth object Jupyter client. Are you getting my point, guys? All these sleuth object Jupyter clients related messages will be given to Jupyter server, and it will present them in a GUI manner. It will present them in a GUI manner. Clear, guys? Maybe for simplification, I have given like this, boss. Can't we use Jupyter without sleuth? For Jupyter, who is giving inputs, guys? Mr. Sri K, use common sense. For Jupyter, what are the inputs? Listen, guys, listen. Those who are not aware of Spring Cloud related sleuth and Jupyter, they go for ELK stack. They are already comfortable with ELK stack. They are going for ELK stack. Right. Project to project, things are varying. Yeah. The developer or programmer. The developer or programmer collects a trace ID, span ID from Jupyter server UI and searches in distributed log file generated by sleuth to find out log messages for flow of execution. To find out log messages for flow of execution. Is that clear, boss? Super. Okay. I think everything is clearly specified in the log file, guys. In one project of microservice architecture, can you tell me how many microservices will be there? Multiple as needed. Cool. What is the microservice intra-communication? It's a communication between microservices, one MS talking to another MS. Cool. In microservice intra-communication, how can we find out which components of which microservices are executed in the request flow? We need to enable distributed logging or tracing on multiple microservices that are in intra-communication. In this process, every MS should have sleuth and Jupyter client support connected to centralized Jupyter server. Okay, Raghavendra, tell me why I should not scold you. Now this fellow is asking me how microservices are communicating. Stupid fellow, what donkeys and monkeys you are catching, Ra? Fin client, LBC, what are all these things? Forgot, huh? Forgot, boss? We studied microservice intra-communication separately for 3-4 days. Guys, you people are not joining on time. Problem number 1. Problem number 2. You are not at all doing any practicals. Raghavendra, are you not feeling shame for not recognizing microservice communication at this stage? REST template is communication between two RESTful services. Web client is same, but to get communication between RESTful services in WebFlex mode. Next, in microservice intra-communication, we take the support of client component, right? We take the support of client component. Fin client, LBC, this kind of thing. Now listen. When to use log4j and when to use sleuth and Jupyter. Log4j is required to write log messages in both independent microservice execution and both independent microservice execution and the intra-communication enabled microservice execution. But we link log4j with sleuth and Jipkin to write log messages, to write log4j generated log messages. Log messages having trace IDs and span IDs, which helps distributed logging and tracing. That means indirectly, again, we are going to involve log4j. Come on, I hope you convinced my dear. Log4j is required to write log messages in both independent microservice execution and the intra-communication enabled microservice execution. But we link log4j with sleuth and Jipkin to write log4j generated log messages having trace IDs and span IDs, which helps distributed logging and tracing. Simple Rabam. Log4j writes only log messages to log file. If you use log4j by linking with what? By linking with what? ELK stack tools are Jipkin or Sleuth, Jipkin and Sleuth. Then those same log messages will be written with trace IDs and span IDs. Same log messages will be written with trace IDs and span IDs. Everyone got the clarity, guys? Log4j just writes log messages to log files. Whereas log4j integrated with ELK stack or ELK stack tools. Write the log messages to log files having span IDs and trace IDs. Having span IDs and trace IDs. Having span IDs and trace IDs. Okay, guys. Trace IDs. That's wonderful. Ravindra, ultimately that one only, na. Log4j just generate log messages. When you use what is that? Distributed logging is possible. All microservice related log messages can be written to single log file. Having trace IDs and span IDs is possible when you use distributed logging tools like Sleuth and Jipkin. Okay, guys. Now listen. Keep Jipkin server ready, boss. Hey, it is not a microservice adding jar file, boss. You have to keep Jipkin server separately ready, guys. It's a Java-based software. Okay, by running Java command, by running the Java command, you have to keep it ready. You have to keep the Jipkin server ready, boss. Yeah, keep Jipkin server ready. Okay, tomorrow I'll show, but you try to keep these softwares ready, boss. Download jar file that represent Jipkin server. This is the jar file, guys. This is the jar. Version may change. You try to take the latest only, not an issue. Start Jipkin server. Copy Jipkin server file to your choice folder and execute the jar file. Your choice folder. Okay, and execute the jar file. That's it. It is not there in Maven repository. Na? Maven repository next class is tomorrow only. You want class tomorrow or not? I think, can we keep class tomorrow? Can we keep class tomorrow? Okay. You want confirmation whether companies are using Sleuth and Jipkin or not? Okay. Okay. Look at the message. Thanks for explanations, sir. Got clear understanding on Sleuth and Jipkin. I went through multiple sources but never got this much clear understanding on how Sleuth and Jipkins are interrelated. In my current project, we are using Sleuth Jipkin. Thank you. Sleuth Jipkin. Thank you. Clear, boss? Got the clarity, boss? It depends upon your project manager issue, which boss is already habituated using AWS tools. He will go for ELK stack. No, you want to use only Spring supplied tools only, then you go for Jipkin and Sleuth. Yes, before arrival of Spring Cloud, ELK stack was popular. But after arrival of Spring Client, Spring-based microservices, people are giving bit extra interest towards what? Sleuth and Jipkin only. Sleuth and Jipkin only. Okay. That's what I'm trying. Few companies ELK stack, few companies Sleuth and Jipkin. Super. Okay, guys. Right. Tomorrow we have a session at regular timing. We have a session at regular timings. Clear? Tomorrow we have session at regular times. Thank you. Have a nice day.